Give me all the keys, I'm about to unlock.
Alrighty. Hello. That's a fun way to start the podcast. Just hello. Welcome to the pod. Thanks for being here. So we do have something on the shelf. We got something very special on the shelf. It's a night podcast right now. It's 6:30. And right here we have something a little more unique than usual. This is a rocks glass. Clayton and Croom rocks glass. Shout out Clayton and Croom with the embroidered Z on it. And we're going to put something in this that goes by the name of Wabam. Buffalo Trace, actually. We're going to pour this up, have ourselves a drink, and get into some ideas. Here it is. Yep, just like that. Yeah, I mean, we're 4 days out from it being a year on the dot. It's November 13th. My first podcast recording was on November 17th. So, I mean, a year. And man, I just wanted to take a little bit here to just reflect on this podcast. The creative act of podcasting, the thought that goes into it, the process of doing it, the outcome that results from this type of digital creativity. Why did I start the podcast? That's a pretty reasonable question. Why did you start a podcast? I think initially it was very much a personal process of growth and self-improvement. Self-improvement in the sense that I was branching away from a lot of my younger ideas, my younger self-perception. It was a breaking point where I felt like I was breaking through some kind of veneer that had been over me for my childhood, my adolescence is probably a better term, adolescence. It was like shedding off my adolescence in a sense. And it was, in some nature, it was taking full accountability and full responsibility for who I am. And it was also, it was acceptance in some sense of self-acceptance of this is who I am. This is what my voice sounds like recorded. Like it or hate it, this is what it sounds like. This is who you are. And these are the thoughts that you have. This is how you think. And it was very liberating in the beginning. It still is. But in the beginning, it was this fresh, new liberation of being. It was this new orientation towards the entire world. It was updating the display on my consciousness in a sense. I've used the term in a sense way too much already in this podcast, so I'll be taking a mental note. I had an influx of ideas and thoughts and notions in my mind that I was sharing out loud publicly for the first time. And those are, if you go back and listen to the old podcast, go back and listen to them. I mean, some of them are a little wacky. Some of them aren't very coherent. Some of them don't make any sense. And that's okay. That is kind of how thinking works. That is kind of how maturity works. You go from a state of chaos and incoherence and disarray, and part of maturing is learning how to notice it, accept it, and then reconfigure it. That's part of maturing. what's unique to me right now as I'm reflecting in this current now is that given how wacky I think the podcasts are from a year ago, it's more wacky to think about what if I had never gotten that out? Because think about it. I mean, all that was somewhat bottled in. It was all residue. I had a lot to say in the beginning because I had 27 years worth of mental residue. And to just address those thoughts and to allow them to escape me, to let those notions of being escape me. I talked about my fear of public speaking. I talked about feeling misunderstood when I was young. I talked about not liking my own music. I talked about, I just put these ideas out there. I mean, ideas really aren't worth much unless they're paired with action. So you can think all you want, buddy, but if you don't do nothing about it, you don't get very far. So yeah, when I started, that's kind of how it was teed up, you could say. It's kind of how it was teed up. And nowadays, I go back and kind of look at the start of the video podcast. I start getting into the video podcast, and man, the camera made me uneasy. I'll say that. I mean, and it wasn't even the camera. In reality, when I think about it now, it was the mental clogging that the camera brings psychologically. And that was a me problem. That was something I had to work through. There were some podcasts where I felt very distraught, where I was disappointed with myself because I wasn't feeling as aspirational as I was when I started, and there was some guilt of I had to address the current state I was in, which, I went through a rough patch for sure. I was a little Sour Patch Kid there for a while, and I just wasn't, I just wasn't very, I was dealing with some just adulthood stress, like very mundane, basic stressors of life. I dealt with it. I admit it. And so to be so driven about an idea and then to have a camera involved that's capturing and somewhat calcifying your ideas in real time, and it's like even if you're in a bad state, we are somewhat solidifying this with the creative hobby we've picked up here, buddy, with the podcast. And it's like I go back and look at some of the podcasts from like 6 months ago, and I'm like, I just want to jump off the balcony because I'm like that's just it's very interesting to go back and see it all in retrospect. I mean, what do they say? What's that saying? They say something about hindsight. What is it? Hindsight's 20/20. That's for sure. That brings us to kind of more current time. I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't take anything away. I wouldn't say this or that or do. I'm very grateful that I'm here where I'm at with the podcast, with, outside the podcast, it's like my life. I'm just daggone grateful for just this life. The people I know, the experiences I get to have, the good things that are occurring as we speak with my friendships, with my intimate relationship, with, getting married next year. Like, I'm just, thank you, God. Like, it almost doesn't even register, man, how good life is. I will keep creating podcasts for sure, because it's a useful hobby. Useful in the sense that I am able to experience this format of experience this mental exercise of being myself, saying what I think coherently, expressing my emotions and my feelings, expressing my emotions and my feelings, and being creative, put whatever I want there. This is all creativity. A lot of it's creativity. A lot of it is, a lot of it is compressing knowledge. Some of it's discarding old ideas and it's dialing it in. With this audio stuff, I'm getting it dialed in. I've been dialing it in for a long time, and it's continuing to dial. If you're going to come. I can talk about the mundane. I love that there's a range to what I can do with this. I love that I don't feel boxed in with my podcast. I don't feel like I have to, I'm not the motorcycle guy. This isn't a motorcycle podcast. I'm not the music guy. I'm not just one thing with this. I love that there's a range that I can calibrate in with where I'm at as a human, as a spirit. I can calibrate this into wherever I want to take it. If I want to have a podcast where I sit there, Remy, if I want to have a podcast where I sit there and talk about accounting, or I sit there and I talk about disc golf, or I sit there and I talk about lifting weights, or I sit there and I talk about whatever, candles, I can talk about what, I like that there's this range of all these ideas that they're like floating in this mental space that you can't see. It's called consciousness, but there's all this information and ideas, and this is an exercise. I can't emphasize enough that it's an exercise of spirit, of consciousness, of mental aptitude. I really can't emphasize it enough. And it's like, it's so interesting, the cycle of this last year of podcasting, where it truly is a cycle. It's a circle. Remy is up on the shelf. Remy, come on. Remy, if you walk over there and step on the keyboard, you're getting kicked out. Yeah. Hey, Rem, I'm going to give you one command and one command only. Remy. Off. The command is off, Remy. Off. Remy, off. Please, son. Off. Dang it, Remy. Dude. You're out, dude. I gave you one chance. This is called discipline, son. Sorry. Gotta be consistent so you pick up on the cues. What was I saying? Dude, I have no idea what I was saying. I was talking about circle. I was saying it's a cycle, and then I said it's a circle, and then Remy jumped over there. And I feel like within the last probably 3 or 4 podcasts, it's compressed. Do you guys know what compressed means? Compressed just means that all the elements that are there are more there, basically. You're reducing the difference between the elements in the data. You're reducing the information between the bits. You're making the highs closer to the lows, and the lows are closer to the highs. You're compressing it. You're making it more solid. And that's what I felt like I've done with this podcasting thing. So it's like a circle. It's like a cycle where it's like I start here. I almost went up. It almost went up. And then it started to come back down. And then it was coming down. And then it hit really low. It distorted out about 6 months ago where I was actually like, I shouldn't podcast. Like, I should stop this. This is like not good for me. This is a bad public image. This is not good for my reputation. This is like embarrassing, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like I stuck that out this last little month. It's like, zoop, right back to where we started. And it's almost like a new cycle. It's like, oh, I'm starting this next year. It's like a new year. It's like, I am coming back around, it's like, and that comes with the downside of it. It's like, okay, if I commit to a second year of this podcasting thing, am I willing to fail? Am I willing to not see any more progress for another year? Because that's another aspect of this podcasting thing. It's like, how much do I weight the reception? How much should I prioritize the reception? Look at the subscriber count. Is that going up? It's plateaued. Oh, okay. Am I getting more views? It's completely out of my control. YouTube can say, hey, we're going to pump this out to 100 people. Here you go. YouTube can do that. It's an algorithm. I don't know what they do back there. The metric that I've noticed has gone up recently is retention. So that's a good sign. People are, you got to do the upfront work. And I don't even want to get too meta on this, but creating YouTube, it's a game. It's like you have to copy, which is another word for text, for writing. The copy of the video needs to grab somebody. The thumbnail needs to be visually appealing. It needs to be visually coherent with your other content. So when people see it, there's a psychological click where they go, I've seen this. Oh, that's give me the keys. Click on that. You got to get people in the front door. Once they're in, no time to waffle around, buddy. You got to get to the content. Get to it. What's on the shelf? Show notes. Get involved. Let them know what's going to happen. Tags and blah, 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 location, blah, blah, blah. Hashtags. Hashtags, what are they worth? I'll tell you, 0. Hashtags are pretty much useless, it seems. Put 1,000 hashtags on the video, still gets 1 view, whatever. But it's all just like it's definitely a hobby. Like, it's definitely like something that is, let me not box it in too much, but yeah, it's fun. I'm learning. And if this all amounts to nothing, at least we had a good time doing it, right? If you're still here, thank you for being here. It means a lot to me. It does help if you like and subscribe. Those two things do help. To what extent, I don't know, but it would mean a lot to me. And yeah, I'll catch you guys on the next pod.